Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Bleu. All right, today's episode we are going to be talking about provider communication and how important it is to have that really good provider coder communication going. I talk about this so much on my channel, and I talk about this and I stress this for many reasons, because the better communication you have with your provider as a medical coder, the better off you'll be, the easier your job will be. And this way you can make sure that all of the proper credit is being applied and, everything works out that way. Now, I want to clarify something really quick, because I don't know how anybody would think that I would say this, but I just want to make sure that this is very clear. When I say pick things up in the documentation, I am referring to picking up diagnosis code selections. When I say making any changes, I am talking about the code selection and the procedure code selection. I don't know how that got lost in translation, but it did. So I just want to make this very clear. Any changes a medical coder does is to the code selection, period. We do not document. We do not add things in. We don't do anything like that. All we're doing is picking up the codes based on their documentation. Okay, so I'm just making that very clear. But the thing about communicating with doctors is this: they are all alpha personalities, every last one of them. And if you are a very shy person, if this is very difficult for you, like talking and public speaking, that's something that you have to work on. I mean, this is only going to make things better for you. In the beginning, I didn't think about communicating with the provider's part. All I was concerned about was the medical coding part. That was all I thought I had to do. But that's not all of it. I mean, you have to be a very good, well-rounded coder. And to be a very good and well-rounded coder, you have to have really good communication skills on top of having really good reading comprehension. Okay, if your reading comprehension is not that great, like say for example, English is not your first language and you're struggling with reading comprehension, it's always going to be difficult for you if you are not working to improve your reading comprehension. I'm just being honest in that fact that you have to know what you're reading. And yes, while we see a lot of medical terminology and things like that, there's ways to read and look up things so that you can further and better understand what you're reading. But you have to have really good reading comprehension. Okay, that is so important. Okay. And not only that, when you are communicating with providers, you have to have a very good speaking voice, okay? Because a provider is going to get very annoyed if they can't understand what you're saying, okay? So if you speak very softly, or you're very shy and it's coming off as, you're really, really nervous, sometimes, you won't get any slack, okay? So you have to learn to be assertive appropriately, okay, with doctors and providers that you're working with. And a good way to do this is to read some leadership books. I have included the titles that I pictures of the books that I read from the Arbinger Institute. I've included those in the community tab of my page, but I can always post them again, and I will post the titles down in the description box because I know sometimes it's a little difficult to see pictures. But reading leadership books, even though you're not technically in a leadership position, will help you to be more assertive and more firm when you are dealing with these providers. Because if they feel like you are, I don't want to say weak, but I mean, there's really no other way to say it. Like very, like they can get over on you, they will. And you have to know how to stand firm with them, because it is about respect, and it is about making sure that they know that you're on their side and you're just trying to help them. Okay. Because sometimes they will get upset with you when you are talking to them or you're querying them and things like that. They will get upset and they will start yelling. This has happened to me several times, but I found out for me that, I could not give up. And that was the thing. And I was making that very clear, that I was not going to give up on them, that I would let them, yell and be upset and things like that. But they should know that I'm going to do my best to keep working to get them everything that they are entitled to. And so, like I said, reading leadership books will really help with that. Looking at body language books is also another secret weapon when dealing with providers and having that good communication. Uh, Maybe you've heard of this, maybe you haven't. So if you've heard of it, I'm sorry. But this is something that some people don't know. When you are talking with a person and you're trying to get them to relax and open up with you, a technique out there is called mirroring. If a person is sort of like going like this, and then you can sort of do the same thing in return, just maybe like this, and just sort of mirroring their actions puts them at ease. Okay. Also, just being open and not crossing your arms in front of your chest, not if your hands are down to your sides, make sure your hands are relaxed. Don't clench your fists. 'Cause sometimes people, when they get nervous, they start messing with their hands. Don't do that. Just relax and just let everything flow. So just be open and have a very good handshake. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. If you have what I call a dead fish handshake, you need to get rid of it. I'm not kidding. When you meet a provider for the first time and you go to shake their hand, because you need to do this in order to have that good relationship start, they're going to tell a lot about you in that single handshake. If you give them that little weak dead fish handshake, it's you're done. Okay, they're not going to listen to you. They will run over you. Okay, you have to give them a nice firm handshake. Look them square in the eye and give them just a little squeeze. Not I'm gonna break your hand squeeze, but just a little squeeze. So this way you can show that you are not scared and that you are there and you mean business. Okay. So if you work on your handshake, if you have a weak handshake, I can't stand the dead fish handshake, and I've talked about this before. I can't stand it. I really hate the dead fish handshake, because to me it's just like that is your first contact with that person. Okay, so but working on that handshake to be very improved will help. Okay, when you are doing queries, say for example you're working on a particular provider on that day, and you start to send query after query after query after query, don't do that. I cap out at 3. All they get is 3. If I have to go any more than that, I will walk over and talk to them. I know that's not always possible all the time, but flooding their inbox with queries is also not a good thing, because if they see a bunch of email, they're going to get overwhelmed and they're not going to want to deal with you. Okay? So having respect and capping out at a certain amount, like I said, I use 3. Occasionally, I will go to 5. It depends on what's going on. If I go to 5 queries in a day, it will be because I've already talked to the provider and told them, hey, like, what's going on here? And they'll say, oh, well, I did this, or I changed this, or whatever. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to send you a couple more, and then that's it for the day. And then I'll wait till the next day, or I'll wait till after they've responded to those queries to send additional queries if there are additional queries. But don't flood their inbox, whatever you do. That is something that is very important. Some people think that that's okay to do that, and you're going to teach them a lesson. No, it's not about teaching them a lesson. They don't need to learn lessons from you. What they need is a partner, okay? Because doctors, yes, while they have a lot of authority and while they have a lot of power in their position as a doctor, they're under a lot of stress. There is so many things that they have to do. They're taking people's lives in their hands every single day. They are responsible for their care. And so with that, it's a lot of responsibility on top of whatever they have going on in their home, with their family, with their kids. They're people too. So that's why you have to take that into consideration. I tried to make things as easy as possible, and I tried to be very clear and upfront with them. whenever I am communicating with them, because you don't know what's going on with them. Okay, and they need to know that they have a good partner, and I've already said this a couple times, but it's very important that you partner with them. Okay, and when you talk to them, say, I'm looking forward to partnering with you in this together. And you may get some providers that say, well, I've never had a coder come to me before. And a lot of them will say that. I've had that happen many times. Well, my coder never said anything to me. Well, this is a different kind of coder, okay? I am not your average coder because I understand a little bit more about like other things, like about communication and things like that. There are others out there like me, but sometimes with some people they let the fear of doctors yelling at them, or maybe a doctor did yell at them, they let that get in the way of opening those communication doors. So I always hope that with my videos that you guys will take some of this back with you to your facility, or when you start becoming a medical coder and you're out into the real world, you know what to do. Okay, because sometimes people are not expecting this. Doctors do not expect coders to be as hands-on. Okay, and another key thing when you're communicating with providers is to celebrate those victories, celebrate the wins. Okay, when when I'm celebrating a win, right, which is like when a provider starts out maybe one way and then they start working with me and things get better and they improve. It's always important to celebrate those wins respectfully and tell them how much you appreciate it. uh, if you may have already seen in the community tab and in on my Instagram page, Medical Coding with Bleu, all one word, I have posted pictures of the Coder Awards. Okay, and the Coder Awards is something that was started last year, and it was sort of like just a sort of way of saying thank you. And we just did it for orthopedics and podiatry at the time. And I haven't done it with my other clinics because the large amount of my providers are with orthopedics and podiatry. So this year I handed out the Coder Awards again. And I took pictures of some of the awards so that way you can see what I did. And these were just things I printed off from the internet, and certificates, and I customized them, and I wrote in like little personal sentiments. And I had a category for best documentation, and then I had best documentation in a trauma, which I thought was funny. And I had the award for most efficient. I did have a PA who is wonderfully efficient and very to the point, which I can appreciate. I did a award for the Hero Award, and this went to the provider whose documentation is very straightforward, very clean cut and to the point, and I can go through his encounters very quickly when I have been spending half my morning dealing with a provider that needs a little bit more time. Um, I did give the award for MVP, which I had talked about the provider that won MVP. I didn't say his name, but I did talk about him in one of the videos where he did yell and he was not happy with me in the beginning because no one ever told him that anything was wrong with his documentation, and I was telling him all of these things that he was missing, and he wasn't very happy about that. But we have come a long way, and his documentation is stellar. So MVP was really hard for me to pick from because it was a surgeon and a PA that were up for MVP, and you know, like I said, it wasn't an easy one, but that PA won for best of the best provider. So there was 3 top awards, which was Provider of the Year, MVP, and Best of the Best, and she got the top award. So there's just a different criteria I use for selecting these guys awards. For Best of the Best, it was because this PA is so consistent with how she teaches other students, and she is so willing to learn more about medical coding, And if I ask her to do something, she does it right away. There is a little bit of fussing, but she's not as bad as as a lot of the other providers. When they hear it, she will understand why. She knows that these things are important. And I was very proud to give her that award because, like I said, she deserved the top honor. And provider of the year, of course, goes to Dr. X because he is amazing. He is the reason that the bar gets raised every year. And that is the reason that he got that award. And he had gotten MVP last year. And last year MVP was the top award, and now this year, like I said, it was very hard. So I had the 3 top awards, which was Best of the Best, MVP, and Provider of the Year. So, it's still, but it's just a small way of showing how much I appreciate the things that they do. And I had another one that was for, I had several that were best documentation. And that's just the way that it worked out. So, I was just looking at them as a whole, like what was their strongest suit, and that's just the way that it worked out. But like I said, when you are working on building these good relationships with these providers, this is something that will improve the work environment. It will improve your standing with them, and just that they can trust you. That's the thing. You've got to learn to build trust. And building trust in this way may seem small, but it is very important because it's showing that you, as a medical coder, are noticing their efforts. Okay. A lot of times doctors will feel unappreciated, and they will say, well, no one understands my efforts, and no one understands and sees the things that I do. And you've got to show them that, yes, you do see the things that they do. And you have to do it in a not butt kisser way, but in a true and genuine way. And in my instance, where I'm dealing with these providers, I do it in a genuine way, because I don't just give everybody an award. Not everybody got an award this year. And so there was a purpose for that, because there needs to be improvement in their documentation, or in the way that they're applying their codes and things like that. These things are very, very important. So I'm going to be working even harder with them this coming year, since they are now all mine. All the orthopedic providers are mine. If you've seen my other episode, if you haven't seen it yet, I recently got full control over the orthopedic clinic. So I had to give up, 3 of my other clinics, which was neurology, rheumatology, and pulmonology. But now I have full control over orthopedics, which I am fine with. I was the only one that was fine with my clinic redistribution. So, but it was because I really like doing podiatry and orthopedics. So, but yes, getting back to the topic at hand. Communicating it with those providers is so important. If you are querying them, if there's any changes that need to be made to documentation, you have to query the provider. You can't query the nurse. You can't query the medical transcriptionist, which a viewer pointed out that I have never, ever talked about medical transcription. I don't talk about medical transcription because their function is something separate from what we do. And the medical transcriptionist for any facility is going to have a different function everywhere you go. For the clinic setting in my facility, the provider does all the dictation. But for their surgery notes, it is the transcriptionists that handle that. So they're the ones who do the dictation and everything. I don't see their surgical notes because I am not the same-day surgery coder. I do not code their surgeries, although I have coded surgeries before. So I do tell them if there is an issue, we can talk about it. When my facility had new technology come in, the MAKO, MAKO, it is a device for like joint replacements and things. So as they're bringing this new technology in, everybody's excited in the clinic, and they all came over and they were talking to me about it. And it was the surgery tech that came over, and he was saying, oh yeah, we have this new machine. And I was like, wow, I was like riveted and fascinated. And I was like, that is so awesome. And I got to thinking about it, and the surgery coders are not there in the clinic, so they don't know all of this information, okay? And not only that, we need to make sure that since this is a new thing that's happening, we need to make sure that the documentation looks right. So I immediately go over to the surgeons and I ask them, hey, what's going on with this? I heard you have a new machine called this Mako machine. And they're like, yes, we're doing this thing. And as it's being described to me, they keep saying robot, robot. And I was like, oh, okay, robot, robot. And I'm like, I wonder what the code is for that. And so I'm looking it up, trying to look it up. And I wasn't able to find it under robot because it kept coming up with some weird code. So I ended up looking for it and online, and I found it is under computer assisted. I was like, well, that makes sense because they talked about the computer and how they had to use the computer for it. So I was like, well, that's about right. So I said, well, let me go ahead and look up the code. Well, I looked up the code. When I found the code, I took it over to the surgeons, took it over to Dr. X because he was first up with this machine. And I said, here's the code. This is what the code you got to use to identify that you use this Mako machine. He's like, oh, thanks. He goes, I didn't even know what to do. I go, hello. And he goes, you're right, Bleu. And then I said, well, I'll go ahead and send this out as a coding tip of the week to the surgeons. And I said, should I send it? I should send it to everybody. He said, yeah, that would be a really good idea. And I said, well, is everybody going to use it? He goes, well, some providers are not going to use it just yet. And so I said, okay, well, at least this way they'll know. Well, it turns out there was another surgeon that was using it. And when he came into the clinic later, but after he had got done with his surgery, he was asking Dr. X, what code was he going to use? And he's like, well, check your email. Bleu already sent the code. And he's like, yes. He's like, she is so awesome. I'm on it because this is a lot. You know what I mean? And it's very, very important. Well, I also went and shared it with the coders that this is the code to make sure that they look out for this new technology that is being documented, in these notes for Mako, And so, and it turned out really well because they were like, wow, I wouldn't have been able to find that code. And I'm like, well, there it is. But it's that communication and having that open door and being willing to listen to people and be willing to talk to your providers and be willing to talk to the support staff and know what's going on, and keeping your finger on the pulse of that clinic is so important. Okay. And now not everybody is going to have that same function of, being able to have that freedom and be able to do that. But if you do have that ability to be able to do that, then you need to take advantage of it. Okay. Because, it's always so hard, I think, when there's a third person that has to get involved. Some facilities will do that. Some facilities will have one person that will do all the talking to the provider, and they'll just have the coder do all the straight coding. Well, it is the coder that's going to know firsthand what's going on versus somebody that's a third party and is having to just come in just to do the talking. So always consider that when at your facility, and never be afraid to talk to these providers. Just make sure that you do it in a respectful manner, and always keep that line of communication open. And when they yell at you, which they will, you have to learn to just not take it personally. Reading those books from the Arbinger Institute will help you to think outside of the box and to realize that it's not about you. It is about the others in this situation, okay? Always consider that these doctors, they are people too, and they like to be respected. They like to be appreciated, okay? So if they're doing good, let them know that they're doing good. If they need to improve, you got to let them know, hey, we need to work on this, and I will help you. But I need to know how to help you, okay? So reading leadership books and reading books on body language is really going to help you, okay? And even, like I said, even if you're not a leader, read those leadership books anyway, because it will help you to be more assertive. You never want to show yourself that you're really like you're not strong enough to stand up for yourself, okay? Because they will run over you, and you don't want that, okay? You want them to be able to, when you're speaking, that they're going to listen and they're going to respect you and you're going to respect your voice, okay? Because it is about a partnership, okay? So those are my tips for tonight about provider communication. So I hope this video has helped. If it has, I hope you'll give my video a thumbs up, because that really does help me in the whole grand scheme of things on YouTube, with my ratings and everything, because I really would like my videos to touch a lot of people and really help more people, even people who are not medical coders, and maybe they are just in a position of talking to people who have authority somewhere, and what to do and how to handle it. Okay, because I think my videos can help a lot of people. At least I hope they do. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and wrap this up. But if you are a medical coder, a medical coding student, somebody curious about the fascinating world of medical coding, a provider or a nurse, I invite you to like and subscribe and follow me on my journey in medical coding. Okay, I will see y'all on the next video. Bye!